Hi, my name is Rynn Caputo with Caputo Brothers Creamery. Today I'm going to talk to you about what you can do with our frozen product called Cagliata. Cagliata is the Italian word for curd. This is simply just the curds that we take out of the kettle and turn into Fior di Latte, Burrata, Formaggio della Pizza, and I'm going to show you how to do all of those things today with this one simple product. So since this is frozen, I obviously can't work with that. So what I've done is I put a bag in the fridge overnight. It has thawed out. I just cut the top off, and I'm going to go ahead and put that into my bowl. Now you'll see I have a little bit of a setup here. This big bowl doesn't actually need to be this large, but I like to have a lot of working space here. This is actually my curd bowl where I'm going to be stretching the cheese. This I like to call my fingertip bowl. If you've ever worked with 180 degree water, you'll know why you need this real soon. This is just tap water, cold tap water right out of the tap, no ice added. And then this is my finish bowl. So whenever I stretch something, it's really going to be kind of loose, and because it's heated, it's going to move on you unless you get it right into the cold water. Then it'll firm up for you. I also have a kettle. You don't have to use a kettle. This is just convenient for me. You could do it on the stovetop, or if you had a stovetop kettle, this one happens to be electric. But what we're looking for is 170 to 180. You always want to err on the side of cooler. If you get over 180, there's a chance you might obliterate the curd. If it gets too hot, you'll know. You'll end up kind of with a pile of mush. Do not throw that away. If you ever end up doing that, I always tell everybody, don't worry, cool it down. You can put it in soups, in sauces, use it as a stock. You can even put it in smoothies. So there's still good vitamins and proteins in there. Just cool it down. You can always use that. But we're going to make sure that we have the right temperature by having just a little simple household meat thermometer. I'm also going to have a wooden spoon that I'm going to use. This one I like to use quite a bit because it's flat and it's a little bit wider at the end, but just a regular old household wooden spoon would work as well. A little salt, and then some heavy cream. And you're going to see how I'm going to use that to make the burrata. Okay, so let's get started. So all I'm going to do at first is I'm going to break up the curd. Now, I was doing a demonstration one time, and I had a volunteer come up and start breaking up the curd, and she broke it into these perfect little rice-sized bits, and she was quite proud of herself. When I came back with the water, I said, ooh, wow. So we had to do another one because there is a such thing as too small. We really want to look at about nickel to dime size pieces. It's the analogy I typically use for folks. Think about it as surface volume. You know, we really don't want to get too much of the hot water around it. Again, heat is a good thing when we're trying to meld these curds together, but too much heat is not a good thing. Just want to break this up. Now we do not salt our curds. Like I said, these are taken right out of the cheese making kettle. So people ask me all the time, how much salt do you put in? My husband happens to be a chef, and we have a lot of different salts, so my answer is always, it depends. And a lot of that is because it really just depends on your salt preference and the type of salt you're using. Today I'm going to be using a Sicilian salt from the Mediterranean coast of Sicily. And it's pretty salty in my opinion. So I'm going to use about a teaspoon, maybe a little less, on this pound of curd. Again, you can always salt it later. If you're working with a salt that you think is not quite as salty, you can go up to as much as 2 teaspoons. It just depends on what you're looking for. Okay, so I have that broken up just about the way I want it. I should mention about the salt that you should not use iodized salt, so always make sure you're using a kosher or a sea salt. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add my salt in at this point. Just sprinkle that in. And then toss that into the curds. If you find any big pieces when you do that, go ahead and break those up. Now, if you taste the curds at this point, which you can, people ask me all the time if, that's okay. It's just, cheese, so you certainly can do that. But it will taste a little saltier at this point than it will once we actually get it stretched. Okay, good. Now what I want to do is wash my hands off. I can use my fingertip bowl to do that, and check the temperature of my water. Again, we're looking for between 170 and 180. Okay, I'm right at about 178, so that's perfect. Again, if you ever start working with it and you find that it's too cool, you can always heat the water up a little bit. So it's always better to err on the side of cooler than too hot. Just pouring this over the curds. I'm not going to use the entire kettle. I'm just going to basically get enough water in there that it covers the curds. And I'm going to let this heat up just for a second. A little stir. Let that heat get around them. I'm going to go ahead and get my stretching hand cooled off. Trust me, it really helps. And then I'm going to start pinching the curds together and giving them just a little bit of a tug, and you can see how it's already starting to stretch on me. Now this is not a squeeze, this is just a light pinch. Think about it as if you were checking the ripeness of an avocado. You wouldn't want to squeeze it too hard, you just give it a light pinch to see if it's ripe. That's about what you're looking to do here. And as it heats up, you can really allow the weight of the curd to help it stretch. This is called melding. We're not melting the cheese here. We're melding the curds together to form our cheese. And what we're looking to do is to heat this up enough to get rid of all the lumps. And you can see that it's really starting to get nice and silky. And to the touch, it's pillowy. It goes from being kind of firm to the touch with the curds to a nice, soft, pillowy touch. It gets very shiny. If you find it's not, stretching on you, or if it gets a little tight as you're starting to stretch it, you can always add more water. And by adding more water, you're just raising the temperature again. And it's the temperature that's going to help that stretch. So you can tell as soon as I added that, it really stretched on me. If you've ever worked with dough before, this is the same type of motion and the same type of lightness of hand. And just like dough, you don't want to overwork it. It'll get a little chewy. Again, you pretty much just want it to stretch under its own weight. And once you get to the point where you feel like you've got a nice stretch, you don't have any more lumps, you're nice and shiny, now we're ready to start making our balls of mozzarella, or Fior di Latte as it's called in Italian. So what I'm going to do, I'm right-handed. So I'm going to start by getting a mass in my right hand, and with my left hand I'm going to make a C with my thumb and my first finger, and I'm going to wrap that C right around the mass and push that in and squeeze it. And then I'm going to take with my right hand and make the exact same C, just backwards, and squeeze it and pull it apart. Not up, not twist, apart. You always want to make sure that you handle it from the bottom, because at this point it's pretty soft and you will get fingerprints in it. Notice that when I finish one, I always flip to the other side. That's the side that's been sitting in the hot water. So again, it heats it back up for me. and it makes it easier to stretch. C, on top of C, squeeze and pull. Now this was 1 pound of curd. 1 pound of curd makes about a pound of cheese. Sometimes it's a little more because you get some water incorporated into it, but it's typically 1